For those who have never met, which is most of you, I'm Michael Pohl. I am one of the co-site leads at the Google Pittsburgh site. One of the things that gets me so excited about working here, which has now been almost 17 years, is the engagement with the community. And so I love being able to have events like this out. And with that, I'm going to introduce you to Kenya, who's going to kick this off. Thank you, Kenya.
Thanks, Mike. Thank you, Michael. So hello, good afternoon, good evening to all of you. Thank you for coming and visiting our beautiful space here at Google Pittsburgh. So the mayor's office, specifically Michelle Walker, reached out to me about hosting an event to celebrate this disability rights, this rally for disability rights. And she sent it over with enough detail to where it got me excited about it as well, right? All of the changes, the positive changes that are happening within this administration, the level of importance that is being placed on things that have been forgotten for a long time really resonated. And so from there, I reached out to, of course, our site lead, Michael Pohl, and some other people to see if this was something that we could host here at our offices. And of course, they agreed, otherwise we wouldn't have you here today. So I just wanted to say, it's not just me, right? I work as a program manager here at Google within Google Shopping. And I do all of the community events and community engagement things. I run our K-12 education team, our Pittsburgh Black Googler Network, involved in a lot of DEI coordination activities for the site because it is my passion, right? It's my heart, it's in my soul. If I'm ever in a position where I have the opportunity to give back to my region and my community, if it's a possibility, I'm gonna do it. And so that's why we are standing here today. And I'm happy that I'm work for a organization, right, that allows me to tap into my passion work and be able to receive and host things like this for the Pittsburgh community. So one, I want to just pause and give a thank you to Google Pittsburgh and the employees of Google Pittsburgh. So just some quick logistical things that I wanna call out here. We do have spaces for our wheelchair guests right here within the blue lines in the front, just to help with proper ingress and egress. So our wheelchair guests, if we could move over in front of the chairs, that would be greatly appreciated. Additionally, the bathrooms. The bathrooms on this floor, if you exit out of the doors and make a left and then another left, there are two bathrooms, private stall bathrooms that sit right there. So I wanted to advise you of that. Additionally, our exit from today's event will be the same way that you entered. It'll be back down the ramp and to the right out the doors. Our offices are fun and we know that, but we also do not want people to explore offices on their own. So please be mindful of that so that we can continue to host community events, to please stay within the confined space of this area and the pre-function space that is located right outside of these doors. That'll help us to continue to do things like this in the future. Additionally, again, we are unable to have people roam the space, and in order for us to host things like this, we actually have to get Google volunteers, right? So for every 10 of you that registered for this event, we had to staff one Googler for every 10 persons that registered. So even though you don't see a large crowd here today, we have a lot of Googlers that are here present that have stayed after their workday to ensure that we could host this event here for you all. I say that to say, when the event is over, please be kind and mindful to allow our employees to go home for the evening because they've been here since 8 o'clock this morning, okay? So when it comes time, about 7:15, 7:20, I know it's an exciting day and we're getting pumped up for disability rights in this rally. Please be mindful to allow people to go home to their families this evening. Outside of that, again, I thank you all for your presence and I will pass it over to Michelle. Thank you.
Again, I was sitting here and taking a moment to take this all in. If we could look around the room at everyone who's here, we've waited long for a moment like this. Most of you know me here. My name is Michelle Walker. If you don't know me, I'm Michelle Walker. I'm the ADA Coordinator and Disability Resources Coordinator in the Mayor's Office of Equal Protection. It is my pleasure to be here and have the honor of assembling everyone for the Mayor's Rally for Disability Rights. The mayor himself came to me and asked me to make sure that I put together an event to recognize and uplift the disability community. Mayor Gainey has made it his mission to make sure the disability community is heard. I see that firsthand even in the halls as he approaches me and asks me, is there anything you all need, anything going on that I need to know about? So that's even in casual passing down the hallway. So he makes it a point to ask. So we want to acknowledge that. This is not by any means a one-woman show. I have teammates in the Office of Equal Protection and all throughout the Gainey administration. I want to thank Zeke. Zeke, raise your hand. Zeke Rediker is the executive advisor on legal policy to the mayor, and we have Anne Marie. Anne Marie, would you like to come up front, please? Anne Marie is the compliance coordinator in the Office of Equal Protection. Yeah. Think of us as a three-strand cord. Come up here, please. So I want to make sure Anne Marie, because I want to make sure that the cameras can see who you are as well. So this is Anne Marie. She's the compliance coordinator. She worked with disruptive properties and workers' rights in the Office of Equal Protection. She lends a hand to me, too, as the ADA coordinator sometimes with some things, too. So I wanted to uplift her and acknowledge her today. Thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you. All right. So this is an enormously important event. Without further ado, I am more than happy and pleased to introduce to you the Honorable Mayor Ed Gainey.
Good evening, everyone. Before I begin, I want to make sure that I thank a couple people. One, I want to thank the City Council Task Force on Disabilities. I think that y'all should give them a round of applause for all that they do throughout the years. I also want to thank Google. Mike, can you stand up for a minute? I'd like for them to just give you a round of applause. But this work can't be done unless you have somebody that is directly affiliated and directly working on this all the time. And Michelle Walker has been incredible. Just to see what she put together today is amazing. And I know she was nervous. I know she was scared because this is a big event. But I just told her if you don't have butterflies, you shouldn't do it anyway. Because I believe it's the butterflies that guides you to a better result. So I would like for y'all to give her a big round of applause for the work that she's put in. You know, it's the 34th anniversary of the American with Disabilities Act that was signed into law. For 32 years, we never had a plan in this city. We never had a plan. I want you to think about that. Never had a plan, but everybody said they was working on something, but they were working on something without a blueprint. So at the end of the day, it just didn't exist. A major piece of civil rights legislation that was passed, that we never put a plan to empower our disability community. Oh, wait a minute. Hold on, let me slow up for a minute. Give a hand to Councilwoman Barbara Warwick. I didn't see Barb in the back. One of the hardest working council people in the book. You can come on up front. You good? All right. You know, we never had a transitional plan. We never had a strategic plan. We never had anything. And so when Zeke brought this to me, I said, you know, we're going to change that. We're going to focus in and we're going to do it. Because at the end of the day, if we're going to make this a city for all, if we're going to make this a city that's more welcoming, we have to put a plan together, not to put on the shelf, but to empower. So some things we started doing immediately without waiting on the plan to be done. It's not done, it's going to be worked on, but we wanted to make sure that we was moving in the right direction. We moved the ADA coordinator from city planning to the mayor's office. Because I believe that the only way that you're going to get a serious focus is if we are focused on making sure that what we want to accomplish lives in the mayor's office. And that was a major part to make sure that it lives in the mayor's office. We also want to share our 3-year, the Disability Rights Strategic Plan, and the fourth coming likely in the fall, our Disability Resource Guide, Resource Center, a livable database of disability resources and information that will assist our disabled constituents in making informed decisions. And we can't do it without you. We cannot do it without you. And we wouldn't do it without you. I always tell people, when you want to impact the community, go get the people in the community that know exactly what's going on, so that we don't make mistakes, we make growth. And in making growth, we create a city for everybody. I don't want nobody to feel that this administration left anybody out. Anybody that knows our work or follow our work know we have been steadfast in making sure that we create a city for all. And it can't happen if we're not dealing with every community that makes up our wonderful city. That's just the reality. And so I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be able to talk about the coordinator's position and move. I'm also happy to talk about, at the end of the day, our new citywide policy on ADA compliance, including a formal process for the resolution of grievances and reasonable accommodation requests to address specific ADA concerns within our communities, improvements to 311. I seen Rebecca here. Can you stand up? Give her a hand. Yeah. To allow for more swift response time and to pinpoint exact locations of ADA concerns of our disability community. That's something that has never, never been done. And for the first time, we are putting it together. And so I want to say thank you to Michelle, because this is a lot of work. This is a lot of work. But I always tell people this, that we're fortunate to have these type of problems. Like, if you don't have a problem, you really don't have a testimony of a better tomorrow. You have to have problems in order to make a better tomorrow. Anybody that wakes up without a problem don't grow. If we got an opportunity to grow all of our communities, then we have to be able to fall in love with the problems we have to turn them into a promise of a better tomorrow. And that's what tonight is about. I heard a lot from our ADA community about how they're not seen and they don't feel heard. We hear you, we see you, and we're not responding by word, but responding by deed. We're actually putting our work behind what we said we would do. And we couldn't do it without you. And I thank everybody who participated to make this day possible, that's going to work with our consultant. He still looked real young to me. So, you know, I looked at his picture and I knew who he was. I said, wow, I need to eat whatever he eating. But I just want to say thank you to Zeke. This wouldn't be possible if you weren't in a position of leadership to make sure that initiatives like this happen. I appreciate your work. And you know every day we're going to go get it. So when we do these slides, and for everybody online, thank you for being online. This couldn't be possible if we didn't have to work with everybody. I meant what I said, that we're going to make this a city for all. And that don't mean we get there tomorrow, but I promise if we plant the seed, the tree will grow and we will get there within 20 years. They say it takes 20 years to develop anything. Let's continue to develop our people in our city and make it the best we have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor Gainey, for those words of encouragement and in celebration of the disability community. We'd now like to welcome Ms. Tina Calabro and her son, Mark Steidel, to the stage, please. Longtime disability advocates.
I am Mark Steidel and I am the program manager of Self-Advocacy Voices, a program that empowers adults of all abilities to educate the larger community about who we are as individuals and give voice to our passions. I want to thank Mayor Gainey, Michelle Walker, and others in the city for their efforts to increase accessibility and inclusion in the city of Pittsburgh. Our relationship with both Mayor Gainey and Michelle Walker goes back many years, and we are fortunate to have them at the forefront of ensuring that the Americans with Disabilities Act is carried out in Pittsburgh.
And I'm Tina Calabro. I'm Mark's mother and forever grateful to him for bringing me into the disability community, a community that I love and enjoy working with so much. So Mark and I are thankful for the changes that Mayor Gainey has initiated since the beginning of his administration in January 2022, including holding a disability town hall to hear citizen concerns, understanding the need to expand the ADA coordinator's office to include a disabilities resource center, both for citizens in the community and also for within city government. We are thankful for his administration for relocating the office from city planning, where it was previously located, to the mayor's office, because that highlights the importance of the work. And we're also appreciative for the city moving forward with a 3-year strategic plan and an intensive transition plan that you're going to hear about today that will identify the work that needs to be done to ensure that Pittsburgh is an accessible and inclusive city.
These are serious steps, positive steps that we in the disability community have not seen in quite some time. We feel that we are being heard and seen. But, of course, how could anyone miss seeing me?
We are hopeful that the transition plan will provide a blueprint for removing barriers to all aspects of city life, and just as important, to increase public awareness about the importance of access and inclusion.
We want to be able to go anywhere and do anything in Pittsburgh. Let's do it.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
That was powerful. Thank you both for what you've shared with us today. We appreciate you. Tina, thank you for your help as an advocate. She's amazing. And Mark, you too. All right. So now, it is my great pleasure to introduce Zeke Rediker, our Executive Advisor on Legal Policy. And we are going to have a great conversation about the 3-year strategic plan.
Yes, we are. Thank you, Michelle. Should I use these?
Yeah, yep.
Thanks, everybody, for coming tonight. This is a great turnout. First and foremost, I wanted to thank everybody who's here, but we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Google. So I know that Mayor Gainey also shouted them out. I want to make sure to shout them out. Kenya is a force. We are so lucky to be working with her, and we are really grateful to be here tonight. Well, we realized when we began to really sit down and think about disability rights in the city of Pittsburgh was that there was no plan. We needed plans to be able to execute on ways to make the city more accessible. And accessibility doesn't just mean barrier-free. It actually means creating a meaningful way for people of all walks of life to participate in city government, city activities, and to enjoy our city in the same way anybody else would. And the ADA was passed 34 years ago this week. For 32 of those years, we haven't had an ADA transition plan, and we haven't had any kind of accompanying strategic plan that will actually guide our work. So what we wanted to do today is get specific with all of you about what we're going to be doing over the next 3 years to make sure that we're executing the mayor's vision to create a safe, welcoming, and thriving city in Pittsburgh. In 2024, we are going to continue with our planning and policy efforts. I'm proud to say that today, for the first time, Chief of Staff Jake Wheatley signed into an effect a citywide ADA policy which governs exactly how the city is going about dealing with grievances that are submitted and how we're dealing with reasonable accommodations, because we want the city to be accessible for all. We're also creating a disability service facilitator program, which was started under the previous administration. And this program is designed to bring people from throughout city government into the fold. Because, you know, we have so many different departments at the city. We have DOMI and DPW, we have the Pittsburgh Police Force. There are a lot of people who work for the city of Pittsburgh, and they should have some working knowledge of our requirements under the ADA and exactly what we're doing with the city to make it accessible for all people. I mentioned that we've initiated a citywide ADA transition plan. You're going to be hearing from Charlie tonight, who works for Precision Infrastructure Management, and he's going to walk you through exactly how these plans work, because his company has a lot of experience doing these for cities just like Pittsburgh. The mayor thanked the City-County Task Force on Disabilities. They are one of our main partners in this initiative. You heard from Tina earlier tonight. Tina, Taisana, and Tess all helped us create this 3-year strategic plan. These plans would not be anything if they were not for community feedback. We also want to be able to communicate to the public all of the work that we're doing related to disability rights through events like this, and also through social media, press releases, community engagement of different sorts. And we're going to need your help, both with this strategic plan, which is a living document. It's nothing set in stone. It's a roadmap for how we're going to tackle these issues, but also with the ADA transition plan. And lastly, there is a new administration that has come on in the county with County Executive Sarah Innamorato. I see Kaylin Snyder here, who's the ADA coordinator for Allegheny County. Would you stand up, Kaylin? We are looking forward to a new era of collaboration with county government to make sure that we are addressing these issues properly. And I'm going to bring Michelle back up to tell you about what we're going to be doing in 2025.
Thank you, Zeke. One of my favorite parts of this plan is increasing public engagement and community partnerships. I'm sure most of you here know that I'm a people person, and that's one of my strengths. And then also, we're gonna complete the ADA self-evaluation and develop the transition plan. That's with Charlie here. They're very experienced and industry leaders in what they do. I went through all of their credentials with a fine-tooth comb because I wanted to make sure we did this right the first time. So they're more than qualified to get the job done. Improve modification and accommodation process and reduce ADA-related grievances. We're working on being more proactive as opposed to reactive. That goes along with what Zeke just explained about the new ADA policy that was signed today. Today, we're getting things done today. We also want to identify and initiate. So I want to highlight, a lot of these things say increase, right? That's a strong word. Complete means get it done. Improve, show improvement. And identify and initiate. So these are action words. It's not just fluff. We want to get things done. So we want to identify and initiate high-need repairs for sidewalks and accessible parking spaces. This is a high priority for this administration. I'm going to bring Zeke back up to tell you about 2026.
Thank you. And just to give a little bit of color to this 3-year strategic plan, part of the way that we started working on this was we realized that other cities had done similar things. We developed a little bit of a working group with some members of CCTFD to learn about what had happened in Philly and what had happened in Detroit, we met with community activists in Detroit, and we met with the ADA coordinator in Detroit to talk about how these plans came together, what was realistic for us to be able to accomplish, and how we could end up serving people in a better way when it came to accessibility. By the time we get to 2026, we really want to begin to focus on workforce development and public safety. When it comes to law enforcement and emergency responders' interactions with the general public, they need to have a specific understanding of how to deal with people who have disabilities in the community. That may include trainings for law enforcement officers, because communication in those situations is key. And frequently, when it comes to mental health, being able to de-escalate situations so that they don't become violent is very, very important, and is going to be a focus of the administration. We also want to begin to improve employment prospects for people with disabilities. And there's two parts to this. First, you have an internal part. The city of Pittsburgh is going to be developing its own capabilities to hire people who have disabilities. And the second part is that we want to work with partners in the private sector to encourage them to do the same thing. We have some great partners here in Pittsburgh, and we really want to continue to emphasize this work. And lastly, we want to complete the ADA transition plan. The first phase is the self-evaluation, where problems are identified and we really figure out what we're dealing with in terms of accessibility. And then the second year revolves around the creation of the transition plan itself, which will show us how to actually tackle these problems. So what we're going to do, we've just created some slides for you here tonight, but we want to be able to release this plan to the public. We plan to do so in short order, and we're really excited about all the work that we're going to be doing over the next 3 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Zeke. It is my pleasure to bring up to the stage, well, the podium, Charlie Zoll of Precision Infrastructure Management. Thank you, Charlie. Thank you so much for the work that you're already doing and the work that you will do with the organization or your company.
Thank you, Michelle.
My pleasure.
Thanks everyone for having me here today. It is, I got to admit, so much fun to be here. So much of my work is done behind a computer. Doing Teams calls with people like Michelle and Zeke, which is tons of fun. Sending emails, reviewing emails, looking at maps, accessibility barriers, et cetera, and it's always a great time to get out and actually meet some people who this is important to. So thank you for having me. Mayor Gainey, thank you for having me as well. Thank you for saying those nice things about my young face. I'll pass the words along. I try to grow out the stubble a little bit to protect the baby face, but not enough. Anyway, so yeah, Precision Infrastructure Management, that's the company that I work with. We have done lots of ADA-related work for some cities that you've probably heard of: Durham, North Carolina, Loudoun County, Virginia, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, Charlottesville, Virginia, Rochester, New York, among many, many others that we've worked with in the past. We're extremely excited, however, to be working with Pittsburgh, not just because Pittsburgh's such a world-class city, but because it has a world-class team that I get to work with. I have really enjoyed working with Michelle and Zeke already. I know we're just in the early days of the project right now, but enthusiasm for this work is an important component of success. So
the interpreter is not on the camera, and we're getting complaints about that on text messaging. So please move over so that you're on the camera. Now you're good.
Got it, thank you. I thought you were going to say I was talking too fast, which is a problem I have. So yes, thanks again for having me. Patrick Nealon, my colleague, was supposed to be with us today. He unfortunately had to leave due to a family issue. He's very sorry to have missed it. He did get to meet Michelle earlier, so that was a great opportunity for us. Patrick has collected thousands and thousands, he says millions, I think he's exaggerating a little bit, ADA barriers in his career with Precision Infrastructure Management, and now he runs our barrier assessment team. So having him here was important to meet Michelle and also get a look at the lay of the land here in Pittsburgh. So I'll talk a little bit about what a transition plan is, put some meat on the bones there. So I'm going to go through each of the components. Thank you.
each of the components in a little bit of detail, and obviously if there's any questions, we can fill in some of that detail later. So what makes a transition plan? Important piece number one is public engagement. So public engagement is something like tonight, where we talk about the transition plan. You get to meet me, I get to meet you. We get to talk about some of the issues that you might be having in Pittsburgh or some of the things that Pittsburgh's doing well. It's not just this meeting, though. It's much more than this. We're going to be doing this plan for multiple years, and there's no reason that public engagement has to be some section that ends on, January 1st, 2025 or something like that. We want to continue getting feedback throughout the process, especially at certain benchmarks. At the beginning, so we can learn a little bit more about the city. Again, things that are going well, things that aren't going so well. And then also as we develop the plan, you get a look at the plan. You can look at our prioritization metrics, which I'll talk a little bit more about what that means. Look at some of the data that we found and make suggestions for how we can prioritize. There are things that you should do from an ADA perspective, from a risk perspective, from any number of perspectives when it comes to remediating barriers in the future. However, there's nothing more important than your voice when it comes to deciding where and when and how money should be spent. That is sort of a core tenet of an ADA transition plan. So it's not just fluff, to use a word that's been thrown around a few times. It's action. Your words do matter and will be incorporated into the final plan. So public engagement, things like this, more meetings in the future, reviewing the plan as it comes along. We also have an online survey that we'll be pushing out to everybody. One important point of that, or component of that survey, is that it doesn't just go to the people who answer online surveys. Those people are great. We value and appreciate the people who are willing to spend their time answering surveys, but we also want to make sure it gets to people who don't spend their time answering surveys. That's something I can only do so much of. I'm not from Pittsburgh. I wish I was. It's a great city. But I'm not from here. So I need your help to push it out to people who might not know about it, who might not typically spend the time to answer it, because it really is a valuable component of the final transition plan. So going into the self-evaluation component. The self-evaluation component is really the main component of what we're doing. And at its core, what it means is we're going to be looking at all of the stuff in Pittsburgh, everything. Anything that the Pittsburgh government does that touches the public, we're going to look at it and we're going to assess it from an ADA perspective. Now, I spoke with some of you earlier, and I want to make one thing very clear. What we're doing is we're looking at regulations. For the most part, somewhat black and white. It is either is or is not compliant. However, one thing I want to make very clear is that that's just considered the floor. We're not saying that we're going to meet compliance and then stop. Just because something's compliant doesn't necessarily mean it's accessible. However, it is a very important component of the journey towards greater accessibility, is knowing where you stand in regards to the actual regulations of the ADA. So we'll take time and we're going to look at pretty much everything in Pittsburgh to figure out where it stacks up against the regulations. So we'll start with parks. Parks are obviously an important component of what the city of Pittsburgh does, and we're going to start with our accessibility assessments in the parks. Now what that means is we will have trained ADA assessment technicians who will be going to these parks, physically going to the parks, and walking pretty much every square inch of that park, looking for things that do or do not meet ADA regulations. Parking is an obvious example. Are there the correct number of parking stalls? Are they marked correctly? Do they have an accessible route from the parking to the feature in the park? So it's great if you have the parking spaces that are necessary, but if there's not a curb ramp at the end of the parking lot and you're stuck in the parking lot, what's the point? So we're trying to look at the whole picture and figure out how the whole picture gives someone the ability to access a feature within that park or not. We're looking at trails. We're looking at barbecues. We're looking at benches, playgrounds, everything, tennis courts, baseball fields. Everything in that park, we're going to be assessing it from an ADA perspective. We mark down everything that we find. Everything that's non-compliant, we're going to mark it down. We use an app called BlueDag. Some of you may or may not be familiar with it if you're in the community. You may have heard of it before. It's an amazing app when it comes to collecting this information and storing it and also making it usable. One of the things that's really important about this process is that you don't just collect the information and then kind of throw it in the garbage because it's hard to understand. It needs to be understandable and usable, actionable data. BlueDag, the app that we use, is fantastic for storing the information that way and then giving Pittsburgh and people within Pittsburgh government the ability to retrieve that data when they need it and also manage it effectively from a holistic perspective. So sort it, filter it, any number of ways within a specific park or within a whole system. So just to kind of put some more on the bones there. What that means is, instead of just worrying about one specific park, you can look at the whole park system and say quickly and easily that you have a specific issue with, let's say, not enough grab bars in a bathroom. And then as opposed to just fixing one at a time, you can see that you have, let's say, 150 bathrooms throughout the system that need to be updated. So the BlueDAG is a great application that makes that process easier on the back end. So parks, we're also doing facilities, all the Pittsburgh facilities. The process is very similar. The only difference is it's primarily indoors as opposed to outdoors like a park. We're looking at the entryways, ramps, parking again, bathrooms, access to services within the facilities. Everything within that facility, we're going to be assessing again for ADA compliance. We'll also be doing pedestrian right-of-way. So these are sidewalks. Sidewalks and features within the sidewalks. Curb ramps being one of the main components. Do you have a curb ramp or not? That's big thing number one. If you do have a curb ramp, is it compliant? The sad state of affairs throughout the whole nation is that most curb ramps are not compliant with current ADA regulations. The question is, how far out of compliance are they? So we collect a pretty comprehensive 16-point assessment on a curb ramp so that we're not just going to say yes, no, compliant, non-compliant, because that information is not actionable. 99% of the curb ramps are not going to be compliant, but we're collecting in a way that we can then prioritize within those non-compliant curb ramps to figure out which ones need to be remediated first. Now, eventually, you want to remediate all of them and bring them up to compliance. But the fact is that that's a long-term process. So we want to find those curb ramps that need to be fixed ASAP, either because they are crumbling and completely non-serviceable, or because they're in high-value areas. So let's say you have one in front of City Hall, no curb ramp or a non-functional curb ramp. You need to replace that. So we're going to be collecting data in such a way that will allow us to prioritize that data for eventual action and remediation. We'll also be looking at non-physical items, so programs and services, and then under that we're looking at the website. So programs and services, I always use the proverbial knitting club for what a service or a program is. If you have a knitting club that meets in a library on Sunday evening, and the library only has stairs down to the area that the knitting club meets, that's not an accessible program. So simple fix, that's the good news, simple fix. So we're just looking for areas like that where we can hopefully make some small, easy suggestions for low-cost ways to make things more accessible. It's a big process, it's a heavy lift. I've tried not to scare Michelle and Zeke too much about it, but it does involve a very full assessment of everything that's going on in the city of Pittsburgh. So just know that Michelle and Zeke are going to earn their paychecks over the next 2 years. I guarantee it. And then on the website, recently there were new regulations that became enforceable under the DOJ for website content. And we will be doing an assessment of the Pittsburgh website. I know that Pittsburgh website is currently being refreshed, so we'll be looking at it after it's refreshed, and also during the process, hopefully so that we can identify any things that may have slipped through the cracks during the changeover over the next few months. Again, a pretty in-depth process, but we've got a great team who will be helping us with that. So once we collect all that data, all that information, that's the self-evaluation phase, we move into the prioritization and transition plan phase. I've spoken a little bit about the prioritization already, but just to go deeper into it, we're going to be collecting thousands and thousands and thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of pieces of data. And all of that data is going to point to budgetary needs. There's going to be a serious amount of budgetary needs identified during this process. No one expects that you're going to snap your fingers and move to compliance in 2027. It's just not realistic. There's not enough money in the country to do that across the nation when it comes to things that are out of compliance. What is expected is that you're going to start making progress. So we look at all this data that we collected. We look at the information that we gleaned from the public engagement process. We look at the best practices throughout the country. We look at the requirements under the ADA. And we look at accessibility, not just compliance. And we take all this information and we work with the city of Pittsburgh. We work with subject matter experts. And we come up with some sort of prioritization schema to identify where the money needs to be spent. And there's a couple different ways that you can prioritize, more than a couple. You can look at things like equity. So where are people with disabilities in the city? Certain areas or groups that maybe have been historically underinvested in through the city. You can look at ADA regulations, use, as in which areas are being used more. So if you have a park that receives 100,000 people in a year as visitors versus a park that receives 10,000 visitors, that's one way that you can prioritize where you should be spending that money. And then finally, you look at risk. So this risk works on the park. It also really works well for pedestrian right-of-way. If you have, let's say, 1,000 barriers on your sidewalk in a mile, you're going to want to prioritize working on that sidewalk over a sidewalk that has maybe 100 barriers over a mile. So we try to take this huge amount of information we have and then make it actionable. That's the real game plan here. And that goes to something that I know Zeke and Michelle have touched on a little bit already, which is that this is a journey. So we are trying to give Pittsburgh and work with Pittsburgh to develop the tools to go on this journey. I already told this story to one person, so forgive me for them hearing it again. But I heard something on the way up, my drive up this morning, that I thought was really, really interesting and worth retelling. So I'll ask a question, and the person who knows the story can't say. Does anybody know how often you repaint the Golden Gate Bridge? All the time. There you go. You never stop. You never stop repainting the Golden Gate Bridge. You paint the whole bridge, and then you start over. Because by the time you get through the whole bridge, you got to repaint the part that you painted 10 years ago. And that's really what we're trying to set Pittsburgh up for with this transition plan. You never stop. There's never a moment when you clap your hands and say, we're 100% compliant, we're 100% accessible. What accessible means changes on a yearly basis. Something that was considered accessible 20 or 30 years ago isn't considered accessible anymore, or it's not a best practice anymore. So really what we're trying to do is help Pittsburgh with this 3-year plan move towards a culture, a continuing culture of compliance and accessibility within the city. And 2 years from now, when we turn in the report, I hope you'll all judge us on that metric, because that's what we're trying to accomplish. So, thank you.
So as you can see, thank you, Charlie. He's been very descriptive and exactly what the plan is and how we're going to get it done. So now we have questions. Does anyone have any questions? We'll take one at a time, please. 1 second. Anne Marie? Thank you, Anne Marie, for your help today with the microphones.
Oh, I'm first. Hi, let me introduce myself. My name's Bill Christner, and I used to be the executive director. I had the honor and the privilege of being the executive director of Three Rivers Center for Independent Living from 1988 to 2004. And right in the midst of the ADA being passed and starting to be enforced. The ADA doesn't have police. So the only way back in the 90s when we could get it enforced was to go to court. And Three Rivers Center for Independent Living and 5 individuals had to sue the city, take you to federal court in order to get you to do curb cuts when you did road resurfacing. And we actually won because you're doing curb cuts when you do road resurfacing. But I am so glad that, this is more of a comment than a question. I am so glad that we have this plan and you're being proactive. This is amazing to think what we had to do in the 90s to get the city to be compliant, and this is self-generated, and I'm very excited and proud of you guys. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Thank you for coming. You know, you raise a good point, which is that when we were trying to figure out the last time the city did an ADA transition plan, we had to consult with the city's archivists and actually go back through the records of city council and the mayor's office to try to figure out the last time this happened. And Michelle consulted with with Joan Stein and some community leaders to figure out the same, and we realized it was 1992, so it's been a long time coming.
We have another question? Monica?
I'll pull them together. Okay. Oh, I'm about to break my phone. Good evening.
Hi, Ms. Aurelia.
Hi.
Hi.
First and foremost, I wanted to thank Mayor Gainey for all he's done. I feel like I've been a disability advocate over 30 years in the city of Pittsburgh and have been through quite a few mayors. We did not feel heard a lot of times. We did not feel included. We did not feel welcome, right? I have a son who has a disability, so I've been advocating and fighting for a long time. So again, appreciate all you've done so far. The question that I have for you, and this is always on my mind, especially as a member of a community that isn't engaged, right? And as well as there are a lot of people who have disabilities that don't have access to technology. We can go down that whole long laundry list of the barriers that they face in order to be engaged. I know you talked about a survey. Some people don't have access to internet. It's a luxury for some people, right? How else are you guys going to engage folks to make sure that you're leveling the playing field? They're not just the actual people that are always engaged, but there are also some people that are always left out. So how are you going to make sure that you level that playing field, that all folks will have the opportunity to be heard?
Thank you for that question. So you're right, there are some people who don't have access to technology or who cannot use technology because of their disability. We're going to make sure we have a comprehensive community engagement plan that'll make sure everyone is included. If we have to send things in the mail, if we have to have more in-person meetings, whatever needs to be done will be done to make sure that the access is there.
Sister Carr, that's a great question. But the other thing that, you heard me say this earlier, is that we also need your help. Because there may be some groups or people that you're dealing with that might be in a small setting, but you know you can get them to your house, you know you can get them to the community center or whatever. We'll come to them. We'll come to them and we can do it right then and there, because the reason why it's important that we work together and the reason why we want to make sure that everybody understands that we all have a responsibility to do this is because the only way we're going to reach the masses is through you. You know the people, you know who can get there and who can't get there, you know the barriers that they may have. And we don't want to exclude nobody. So sometimes it got to be a smaller group, right? Groups that we can meet right in the neighborhood. Me and you live in the same community. And I know exactly what you're talking about in regards to a lot of people just don't know in the community. We have that in a lot of different communities. And I always say we preaching to the choir. And we need to go get some new congregation members. I get that. But we're going to need you to help us get these new congregation members. And so even if we can have smaller meetings to be able to talk to them a little bit one-on-one, we're willing to do that. And that's where the relationship between government and the community comes into play. Because the more we work together to reach the ones that's hardest to reach, the more effective we're going to be.
Hello, my name's Andrew Neal, and I represent the Howard Levin Clubhouse. And we are a clubhouse that deals with people with mental illness, and we have a work order day. People come in and do the work order day, and this program, when I heard about this event, I was very interested because I represent the clubhouse, and I wanted to represent them. Meeting you, Mayor, and that was a very, very moving speech. Thank you. And everything that you said is true. Mental illness is very strongly in the city of Pittsburgh, and I hope this in the next few years this gets passed. And there's just one question I have: Have you guys ever heard of the Howard Levin Clubhouse, or any representatives of the clubhouse? And what's your take on the clubhouse?
I haven't heard. I have not heard.
Oh.
How about any? Have you heard, Michelle?
I've heard of them through another organization, yes. and actually was asked to share the information about today with your organization. So yes. We have time for one more question today.
There's also one in the chat, I'm given to understand, online.
How much more time we got? How much more time we got, Rudy? Because we got 3 up and 1 in the chat. Can we get 4? All right, we got to be quick, y'all. Quick, I'm trying to get everybody in.
Okay, so mine is a statement, not a question. I just want to point out that, you know, starting with accessibility doesn't start with physical infrastructure. It also begins like right here in this room with the language that we use. We have to be careful, and the 2 terms I heard today were wheelchair guests and ADA population. I just want to point out we got to be careful in the choices that we make with these terms. You know, disability population, you know, that's like calling something the civil rights population, the ADA population. And wheelchair guests, my wheelchair is not a guest, it's the seat I'm sitting in. So just please be mindful of that. We have 2 questions from the chat that's up there. Oh, Donna's got that? I have one of them. Okay. One of them is, are you improving hiring prospects? Will the city and county offer more permanent remote roles for immunocompromised people like Debbie?
Say that again, please. I'm sorry.
Will the city and county offer more permanent remote roles for immunocompromised people?
Yeah, so.
You need a mic. I still have.
There's a little bit more.
Oh, here, Donna's got it. Sorry, go for it. Thanks. 2 mics. Oop.
I'm an immunocompromised and high-risk disabled individual, and it's very hard for me to participate in city and county programs, as I've been told to not go to unmasked gatherings of people. What is the city doing to engage with people like me who have been pushed out of public meetings, and will you be able to increase remote employment opportunities?
I think and hope the answer to both of those questions is yes. It's part of the plan. It's part of the way that we've thought about this. When we were thinking about how to do this event, we realized it was very important to have a virtual option for people who might not be able to attend in person. We certainly appreciate you being with us here today. And when it comes to hiring, the city takes reasonable accommodations for employment very seriously. And just to show you how serious we are, our Director of Human Resources, Paul Kellerman, is here with us today. We frequently bring people of a very high level of seniority out to these events so that we can talk about these kinds of things. And I can tell you that it's part of the plan, it's something we take seriously, and we want to make sure that we get it right in terms of policy.
So we got one right here, and then one over here.
Monica's trying to end up.
Okay, I'm sorry. One here, one here, one here.
Mine's short. I think it's wonderful what you're doing to bring the city up to date and hopefully going beyond what the ADA requires, since we all know that the ADA needs to be updated desperately. But what are you going to do about businesses? And how are you going to bring them along with you? Because it is wonderful to have curb cutouts and sidewalks, but it's real difficult in parks. But if you can't get into a business, that's the hard part, is that to make sure that the businesses come along with you and are as accessible as what the city would want them to be.
So I'm glad we got a lawyer today.
So part of this is what we can do on our own, and we have jurisdiction and the ability to do. Part of it is working with partners. And I mentioned the City-County Task Force on Disabilities today. Just a few months ago, I worked with Paul O'Hanlon, some of whom you may know, who is also a lawyer, because when you look at the state building codes, you might have a business in Pittsburgh that has an ADA accessible bathroom right inside of a front door that somebody cannot get inside of. Or you might have an ADA accessible bathroom down a flight of steps with no elevator and no ability to get there. So what we did was we submitted a comment to the Department of Labor and Industry advocating for a change in our building codes to give cities more discretion to be able to work with businesses, to be able to regulate these kinds of issues, because Pittsburgh is an old city. We have a lot of hills in this city. This city is not the most hospitable place for people who have disabilities. And so working with our partners and lobbying the state and other governmental entities and organizations is an important part of that.
Well, and I also thought, what you're doing to get business to buy into it.
Yeah.
Because that's the hard part, is getting businesses to buy into it. Because we always hear that we are not consumers, that I don't need to change my building because disabled people don't come here. Well, of course they don't. You have a step.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
That, I'm glad to hear that, and glad to hear you're working with Paul.
Yeah, and so I think a lot of these things require a united front. That's why we're excited about working with the county and working with the state and working with a lot of different entities to actually, make the change that has been a long time coming.
Good evening. My name is
Zeke.
Christina Kinney, and I've been a part of the disabilities community for 11 years. I have a comment and a quick question. When we were talking about getting people involved and meeting the community members where they're at, I am hoping a part of these plans include community members like myself who are disabled and represent other communities who are willing to give a time to a committee or volunteer, or even, if it is available, to change jobs, to be a part of something like this. I say that because when we're talking about meeting the community, I see people here from Disabilities Pride organization and different things, but those organizational events are often either limited because of space or don't have the population of attendance that we would like to see to get more in community engagement. There's also not a diverse population as far as ethnicity and capability or mental health at these events. So if there is a committee or a monthly organization, like I think about the communities of Homewood and the community of Lincoln where I live, those communities have strong pride. Those communities have people that will come to things if you meet them where they're at. And so Disabilities Pride event is a wonderful space, not just for representatives to come and say hello, but for people's communities to really invade these events so that we can see different resources, mental health resources, and have strong connections throughout the city of Pittsburgh. So that's kind of like a comment, and I'm also volunteering myself as a young Black woman with a disability who also is a licensed therapist. So that stuff is important to me. I see some of my UPMC colleagues here too that I've met before, but we just haven't, there's not enough time to touch base. My other question, my question is, if there anything in the strategic plan that will hold businesses and organizations accountable for their employees that are identified as disabled or have a different capability? One of the biggest things I'll share with you that I have trouble with is being hired at a position. I was very proud that my current position, I got my job on an interview, on a virtual interview, so that the people could not see that I have a prosthetic. And that's something that I battle with, and people say, well, why do you only work at a job for a year? It's because that my employers are typically scared, uneducated, untrained, and there's not a system to hold them accountable to help them to understand me and decrease their anxiety about people with disabilities. So is there something in strategic plan that, I know we talked about trainings, and I don't want to really use the word hold accountable because that's very negative, but how can we get people to decrease their anxiety and increase their inclusivity when they're hiring someone with a disability or someone who needs to be more inclusive with a capability? Because oftentimes we talk about diversity and inclusion and we stop at race and ethnicity and not capability.
Thank you for that question. What's your name again? I think we should connect after this meeting is over and have a discussion, especially about the minority communities that you named.
Michelle and Rachel from the Commission on Human Relations.
Oh, I didn't see. Oh, hello. I didn't see you. Hi. So one of the things that we do is,
Stand up so people can see who you are.
one of the things that I'm proud that we do is we actually give resources to people. When they call me and they say they're having an issue with their employer, we offer a way for mediation to occur. And one of those ways is we phone you out to someone like Rachel at the Commission on Human Relations. So there's different resources that are available to help mitigate and mediate in those types of situations. So if you'd like to discuss that further, we can have a case-by-case conversation. But in general, that's one of the resources that I refer people to, because I'm not allowed to do anything when it comes to outside entities, except I can refer you to a resource who does have the capability to handle that.
Last one, right?
Last question.
Thank you. My name is Guy Caruso.
Hi, Guy.
I'm with the Institute on
I think I know
Disabilities.
you.
Yeah, at Temple University. We're the state's federally funded University Center for Excellence in Development Disabilities Research Training, and it's got a long federal title. But I came to Pittsburgh around 25 years ago, and I was just so impressed with the strong disability advocacy community that's here. So you really have a lot of strong leaders here who've cut their teeth on getting things done. Back in 2000, there was I think a Disability Agenda 2000 it was called, if I'm not mistaken. It was very far ahead of its time. It certainly played off the ADA, but it was looking at both civic, sporting events, other sort of things, really looking. I think it's a plan worthwhile looking at if you can get your hands on it, because again, it was very visionary. And I'm hoping that, you know, the ADA is wonderful. It's given us a voice. Again, how you keep people's feet to the fire is the big question, and the ADA, as it was mentioned, needs to be changed and updated, and it's always, you know, threatened to be changed in many ways. But I hope we can be visionary and look beyond the ADA and really be creative in what this community can be. Because the ADA gives you some guidelines around it, but it doesn't give you necessarily the vision we need to really look further than that. So that would be my suggestion, that it should guide us, but it shouldn't limit us. So thank you.
Thank you, Guy. I believe that is all we have for today. We are going to wrap it up. So I want to inform everyone that Charlie Zold has created a survey that will go out to the email address that you provided when you registered. We want to genuinely thank you all for coming today. There's nothing about us without us, right? So we want to bring the mayor up here to close us out. Thank you so much. It's a celebration.
Hey, give her a hand, y'all. Come on, give her a hand. Give her a hand. Michelle, stay here, stay here. One, I just want to say thank you. There's a lot of work that got to be done, you know, and we're not going to be able to do this overnight. Let me be clear. It takes time. We need to plant a seed that's so deep that it outlives us. And the only way we're going to do that is with you. One of the things that Michelle's sort of doing already internally, just to give people focus, is she went around and started doing trainings. Can you talk about that for just a minute, please?
Sure. Thank you for bringing that up. So I'm honored to have initiated and piloted programs where we have our city staff learn how to do American Sign Language. And we've also done immersive disability immersion trainings where I take our staff members out into the community and they do utilize mobility devices such as wheelchairs, walkers, and walking canes. I want our staff members to be aware that when people in the disability community come in with issues that they're having within the right of way, that it's not just a gripe, there are issues that need to be recognized. So I take our staff who have all been willing participants to the community to see exactly where the problems lie. So at the end of all this, my plan is to have some data to give to Charlie so that we can have those situations addressed. So it's not just for show, there is an end result with that. But in the meantime, we want to make sure that we're encouraging our staff members to be aware and more empathetic of people with disabilities.
And I thought that was big because it gave a lot of people on our staff a different perspective that they didn't have. You can't really understand it till you walk it. So I'm up next. I'm going to get trained. And the reason why it's important is because if I go through it, the rest of my staff will go through it. And so as the leader of the city, I know how important it is for me to go first. So my staff, some of my staff have already did it, but my senior executives will do it. I'm looking forward to it. It's the first time that a lot of them have even thought about doing something like this. So I asked them if they wanted us to tape it. They was like, no. But we may tape it anyway. But it just,
video?
you got a little bit of video? So I just want to say thank you to everybody for being here. Again, if this was something that I might have my top executives do, then this is something that we're going to move. The reason why it's important for me to have my top executives do it is because they can't really understand the work unless somehow they understand going through it. And that's what this is all about. I want to thank Michelle again. I want to thank your whole team. Appreciate both of you for the work that you've put in. And again, thank you for being here. Thank you for leading this initiative. And it's not just a plan to execute, it's executing the plan. So a lot of things we've already started and we will continue, because I always believe in this city, we love to do plans and they put them on the shelf. I am so sick of that. So we execute the plan, that plan to execute. We're already underway when it comes to execution. Thank you.
Please make sure that
Can we thank the interpreters too? Can we thank them?
Oh, absolutely. We want to thank our great interpreters who provided access for us all today.
Give them a hand, please. Give them a hand. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.